Have you ever stood on the edge of something big, something you know God is calling you to, but every part of you is shaking? You're not lazy, you're not ungrateful. You're just scared. Scared of failing. Scared of disappointing the people who look to you for strength. Scared that this next level, whatever it is for you, will expose what you don't have. Your lack, your doubts, your exhaustion. Maybe you're the one everyone leans on. You're the one who always shows up, always gives, always pushes through. But now, you're not so sure you have what it takes. And here's the hardest part. People are depending on you. Family, friends, teams, maybe even a congregation. You feel the pressure to rise, but the fear is louder than your confidence. This is where Joshua stood. Joshua 1 isn't just a motivational verse we quote on mugs. It's a moment. Moses, the great leader, the one who walked with God, face to face, is gone. And now Joshua is expected to lead an entire nation into a hostile, unknown future. Can you imagine the pressure? He was next in line, but not sure if he was next in strength. He was chosen, but probably wondering if he was truly ready. Kinda that's when God speaks. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9. God didn't say, try your best. He didn't say, fake it till you make it. He commanded strength. He commanded courage. But he also gave Joshua something else, his presence. Because God knew something we often forget. Strength doesn't come from ourselves. Courage doesn't start with confidence. It starts with knowing God is with you. Let that sink in. Your courage doesn't need to come from your resume, your bank account, or how many people believe in you. Real courage is born from the unshakable presence of God. This video isn't about pretending you're fearless. It's about learning how to face your fear with faith. Faith that trembles but still moves. Faith that cries but still walks. Faith that doubts but never quits. We're going to talk real. No cliches, no fluff. Just the truth about what it feels like to want to move forward but feel paralyzed by anxiety, doubt, and the weight of responsibility. You might be someone who's tried everything. Read the books, went to therapy, fasted, prayed, pushed, and yet the issue is still there. Or maybe you've been avoiding your next step because deep down you're afraid it'll be another failed attempt, that this will be the moment where people realize you're not as strong as they thought. But let me tell you, if God called you to it, He's prepared to walk you through it. This moment you're in, it's not the end, it's a pivot. And sometimes pivots feel like breakdowns before they reveal themselves as breakthroughs. Over the next few minutes, we're going to walk through the fear, not around it, not ignoring it, right through it, with faith that's messy, real, and strong enough to move mountains. Not because you're perfect, but because you believe in a God who is. Let's start this journey together. Fear is more than a feeling. It's a storm. It starts small, maybe as a tightness in your chest or a restless night's sleep. But left unchecked, it grows. Fear whispers in the background. Then suddenly it's shouting, what if you're not good enough? What if you fail again? What if this is the moment everything falls apart? And the cruel part, fear doesn't just talk. It latches onto your memory. It replays every past disappointment, every failure, every time you gave your all and came up short. You wake up heavy, go to sleep exhausted, not from work, but from worry. Maybe you don't even call it fear. You call it being responsible. You call it planning ahead. But beneath all that careful calculation is a soul that's bracing for the worst, because that's all it's known lately. Let's be real. Fear isn't just some vague emotional fog. It's physical. Your heart races when you think about making that next move. Your stomach drops when you picture the what-ifs. You've avoided opportunities, not because you're lazy, but because the pain of another letdown feels unbearable. Fear lies, but it lies with receipts. It brings up the job you didn't get, the relationship that didn't work, the last time you believed and nothing changed, the last prayer that didn't seem to reach heaven. And still, you show up, you push through. But what people don't see is the inner battle, the trembling hands behind the confident words. the sleepless nights before the public victories. You've mastered survival, but you're not living. You're enduring. There's a name for this: high functioning fear. You smile, you serve, you lead, but inside you're scared to death, scared that the thing you've been praying for might never happen, when just in the trying, or worse, that it will happen and you'll mess it up. This kind of fear doesn't shout, it simmers. It makes you hesitate just a second longer when opportunity knocks. It makes you triple, check your plans, not out of excellence but out of dread. It makes you say I'm fine when you're anything but. And maybe the hardest part, you've prayed, you've fasted, you've believed, you know God is real, but you also know what it feels like to walk away from another altar call and still feel broken, still feel scared. You're not weak, you're worn, you're not faithless, you're just tired. You're just tired. Tired of trying to be okay for everyone else. Tired of bouncing between bold declarations and private breakdowns. Tired of waiting for something to shift. But here's what I want you to hear. Fear doesn't disqualify you from faith. It's part of the journey. Even Jesus, in the Garden of Gethsemane, was in anguish. He didn't pretend it was easy. He prayed, "Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me." He knew what was coming, and he felt the weight of it. That tells us something powerful. Being afraid doesn't make you any less called. It makes you human. What matters isn't whether fear shows up. What matters is whether it gets to make your decisions. Right now, you might feel like you're standing in the dark, like you're trying to move forward with no map, no clarity, and very little strength. But remember this, God never asked you to have it all figured out. He just asked you to trust Him. Fear will always tell you to freeze, but faith, even shaky, whispered, desperate faith, says, take the next step anyway. And listen, faith doesn't mean the fear vanishes. It means you act in spite of it. It means you show up to the battle even when your knees are shaking. It means you trust that the same God who brought you through the last storm will carry you through this one too. Maybe your fear is connected to something you've never shared. A secret shame, a private struggle, a silent regret that you carry like a stone in your chest. And every time God tries to move you forward, that fear reminds you, you're not worthy, but grace says otherwise. Grace says, I chose you knowing everything about you. I chose you before you fixed it, before you earned it, before you overcame it. You might feel like fear is winning, but even the fact that you're still here, still listening, still hoping, that's proof that fear hasn't won. You haven't quit. You haven't backed down. And that's what courage looks like. Courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It looks like getting out of bed when you'd rather stay hidden. It looks like applying again, showing up again, loving again, trying again. Fear feels real, but so is faith. So is God's presence. And in this next part, we're going to see how Joshua didn't just hear God's words. He lived them. He walked forward into uncertainty, into war, into the promise. And that same God who told Joshua to be strong and courageous, He's speaking that over you too. Let's keep going. Strength isn't just about muscles. Courage isn't just about boldness. In the kingdom of God, these words mean something deeper. In Joshua 1, God repeats Himself 3 times in just a few verses, be strong and courageous. Why repeat it? Because God knew Joshua's fear was real. He wasn't just giving a motivational speech. He was addressing the exact war going on inside Joshua's heart. Joshua had served under Moses, but now it was his turn, leading people into enemy territory, carrying the weight of God's promise. And he probably felt like many of us feel when we're called to something big. God, I believe you, but I don't believe me. That's where strength in God starts, not with self-confidence, but with surrender. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Joshua 1:9. God doesn't say be strong in your skills or be courageous because you've got a good plan. He roots Joshua's courage in this one truth. The Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Your confidence doesn't come from the certainty of the outcome. It comes from the presence of the one who promised to never leave. But how do we walk that out? How do we stay strong when fear keeps knocking? How do we fight the invisible battle in our minds, the one that tells us we're not enough. Ephesians 6:12-18 shows us, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, authorities, powers of this dark world, and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." This means your real fight isn't with your finances, your schedule, or even your critics. It's spiritual. That anxiety, that heaviness, it's part of a larger war for your soul, your purpose, and your peace. That's why Paul says to put on the full armor of God, because this isn't about fighting harder, it's about standing firmer. Let's break that down. The belt of truth. Start with God's word. When fear whispers lies, truth shuts it down. The breastplate of righteousness. You're not protected by your perfection, but by his righteousness. Feet fitted with readiness, don't get stuck. Keep moving forward, ready to walk in peace. Shield of faith, your belief in God's promises extinguishes. Helmet of salvation, guard your thoughts. Remind yourself daily that you are saved, chosen, and secure. Sword of the Spirit, this is your weapon, the Word of God. Speak it out loud. Declare it over your life. Prayer, this is how you stay connected. Your line to the commander is always open. Now think about this. God tells Joshua to be strong, but he also commands him to meditate on the word day and night. Joshua 1:8, because your strength is directly tied to what you feed your spirit. You can't fight spiritual battles with carnal tools. Scrolling social media, venting to friends, or numbing yourself with distractions might offer momentary relief, but they won't bring true courage. Real strength is cultivated in God's presence. It grows when you worship while worried, when you pray while panicked. Money's tough. When you say, "God, I don't feel ready, but I trust you anyway." God's call to Joshua wasn't a pep talk. It was a battle strategy. He wasn't saying, "Don't feel fear." He was saying, "Don't let fear lead you." And when you suit up with the armor of God, fear loses its grip. You stop reacting and start advancing. Joshua would go on to lead Israel into victories they never thought possible, not because he had all the answers, but because he obeyed God one step at a time. And here's the secret. Every time Joshua moved forward in faith, God showed up in power. Walls fell, rivers parted, battles were won. Not because Joshua was fearless, but because he was obedient. And that's where real courage lives. In obedience. It's not about the absence of fear. It's about trusting God more than the fear. You don't have to feel strong to be strong. You just have to trust the one who is. So what does this look like for you? Maybe it means stepping into a role you feel unqualified for. Maybe it's having that hard conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's saying yes to something that terrifies you, simply because God said go. It could be something as quiet as apologizing, as bold as starting the ministry, as personal as forgiving yourself. Strength and courage don't mean perfection. They mean persistence. Don't mean every time you say yes to God and no to fear, you are building spiritual muscle. You are becoming the Joshua of your generation. Not because you have it all together, but because you believe the God who goes with you. Courage is a choice, and today, you have a choice. Will you let fear have the final word? Or will you believe that God is with you wherever you go? You may not know how it ends, but you know who walks with you. And that changes everything. There's a unique kind of pain that comes from trying everything and still seeing no change. It's not just the frustration of delay, it's the heartbreak of hope deferred. When you've done what they told you to do, you followed the steps, you prayed the prayers, you showed up in faith. And yet the situation hasn't shifted. That's where we meet the woman in Mark 5. Scripture doesn't even give her a name, but we know her story. A woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. Mark 5:25-26. 12 years. 12 years of isolation, pain, shame, being labeled unclean, no hugs, no worship gatherings, no physical touch, just emptiness. She wasn't just hurting physically. She was invisible emotionally, spiritually rejected, financially broken. But somehow, she still believed. That's the miracle before the miracle. She still had enough faith to try one more time. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. This woman didn't have a formal invitation. She wasn't on the program. She wasn't even supposed to be there. But she pressed through a crowd she wasn't welcome in, just for a chance to reach the one she knew could change everything. That kind of faith is raw, desperate, relentless, and many of us know exactly how it feels. You've had the issue for so long, it's part of your identity now. It's not just something you struggle with, it's how people label you. The one who's always anxious, the one who never quite gets it right, the one who's been trying for years. But deep inside, something in you still believes. Still believes that Jesus can do what no therapy, sermon, or self-help plan could. Still believes that a single touch from heaven can change what a decade of effort couldn't. This woman didn't need attention. She needed transformation. And the moment she touched his garment, immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. Immediately, after 12 years of suffering, it only took one encounter to change her forever. Jesus stopped, turned, and said, "Who touched me?" Not because he didn't know, but because he wanted the world to see the woman he just healed. She tried to sneak her way into a blessing, but Jesus called her forward, not to shame her, but to affirm her. "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." He didn't just fix her issue, he restored her identity. She came in as unclean, but walked away as daughter. She came in hiding, but left seen and whole. So what does that mean for us? It means your issue doesn't disqualify you. It qualifies you for a miracle. You don't need to have it all together. You just need to have the faith to reach, to press, to believe again. Yes, even after it's been years, even after it feels hopeless, even when you've lost money, friends, and confidence, reach anyway. And that's the heart of faith. It refuses to let circumstances define reality. It pushes through fear, shame, exhaustion, and disappointment, not with perfection, but with persistence. Faith says, "I know what I've been through, but I still believe God is able," and Jesus honors that. He doesn't require you to have a plan. He just asks you to trust him enough to take one more step. Right now, some of you are in your 12th year. Your heart is worn out. Your efforts feel wasted, but your faith is still flickering, and that's enough. Faith isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the whisper you barely believe when you say, "God, I'm tired, but I'm not done." This woman could have stayed home. She could have accepted her condition as permanent, but she didn't. She crawled through a crowd with nothing but a thread of belief. And here's the good news. Jesus doesn't ignore desperation. He responds to it. He sees the broken places no one else does. And when your touch meets his power, change isn't just possible, it's immediate. The healing may not always come the way we expect or on our timeline, but it will come. Because Jesus honors faith, especially the kind born out of pain. So don't give up now. Keep pressing. Your breakthrough might be one reach away. There comes a point in every believer's life where logic just breaks. You've done everything right. You've followed every step. You've been consistent, prayerful, intentional, and still nothing makes sense. The math doesn't add up. The timing seems off. The door you thought God would open is bolted shut. This is where logic gives out, and faith has to take over. Faith was never meant to be logical. If it could be explained, it wouldn't be faith. If it could be mapped out with precision, it wouldn't require trust. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." In other words, faith starts working when your senses can't. That's exactly what happened with the woman in Mark 5. Logically, her situation was hopeless. Doctors had failed. Money was gone. Pain had persisted. Logic said, "Give up." But faith said, "Just touch him." Faith is unreasonable by design. It dares to believe in a future your present can't justify. It walks on water when the laws of nature say you'll sink. It speaks life in the face of death. It builds arcs when there's not a cloud in the sky. When logic fails, faith says, God is still who he says he is. That's why so many miracles in Scripture look foolish before they look powerful. Noah built a boat before rain existed. Abraham left everything without knowing his destination. Peter stepped out of a boat in the middle of a storm. The woman in Mark 5 touched a garment instead of a physician. None of it made sense, but all of it made history. Because God isn't looking for the smartest strategy. He's looking for surrendered hearts. If you're at a place where nothing around you makes sense, congratulations. You're in the perfect position for faith to rise. God does his best work in confusion. He specializes in the impossible. And sometimes, he lets logic run out just so your faith can kick in. See, logic isn't bad. God gave us brains for a reason. Planning, wisdom, and preparation are biblical, but faith goes beyond what's safe. It moves when nothing is certain. It believes when nothing is visible. Faith is what holds you when the plan fails. It's what steadies you when every why goes unanswered. It's what keeps your feet on the path even when every step hurts. And sometimes, the only thing that will carry you to your breakthrough is the ability to say, I don't understand, but I still trust you. That's not weakness, that's worship. Faith is not the absence of questions. It's the refusal to let those questions override God as promises. This is why the woman didn't need a conversation with Jesus. She didn't need an explanation. She just needed to touch. And that one act of reckless faith overruled 12 years of painful logic. So what does it look like in your life? It looks like applying again after rejection, loving again after betrayal, dreaming again after disappointment. It looks like praising when you still don't have the answer. It looks like praying when you still don't feel peace. It looks like saying, nevertheless. Jesus himself showed us this in Gethsemane. When the suffering seemed unbearable. When logic said, find another way, Jesus said, nevertheless, not my will but yours be done. That is the ultimate act of faith, yielding your will when everything in you is screaming for escape. So if you're in a season where logic has failed you, good. It means you're finally ready for faith to lead. Let your trust in God become louder than the silence of unanswered prayers. Let your belief be more stubborn than your fear. Let your faith become the ground beneath your feet, even when the bridge is invisible. You don't have to understand the how, but you just have to obey the who, and that is enough. Because faith, real, raw, surrendered faith, never disappoints. There's a special kind of pressure that comes when you're the strong one. When you're the one everyone expects to be okay, to lead, to show up, to carry the load, to have the answers, even when inside you're barely holding on. It's hard to explain this kind of weight to people who don't carry it, because from the outside you look confident, you function, you perform, you succeed. But behind the scenes there's a war going on, a war between the version of you the world sees and the version that cries in silence. That second guesses everything. That wonders if you're really enough. This is what I call high-functioning doubt. You don't look like someone who's doubting. You're still serving, still smiling, still moving. But inside, there's a constant hum of fear. What if I can't keep this up? What if they find out I'm not as strong as they think? And what makes it worse is that people are depending on you, your kids, your spouse, your team, your church, your audience. You don't get the luxury of breaking down. You don't get the freedom to fall apart. But here's the truth. Even leaders have limits. Even the strongest among us have days where the doubt is loud and the strength is low. Look at Elijah in 1 Kings 19. After calling down fire from heaven and defeating the prophets of Baal, he runs away, scared, exhausted, and depressed. He literally prays, Lord, take my life. This is the same man who stood on Mount Carmel in boldness, and yet the pressure broke him, not because he lacked faith, but because he was human. You can be anointed and anxious, called and still questioning, empowered and still exhausted. God never asked you to be everyone's superhero. He asked you to be obedient. He asked you to trust him, not to be him. When you're in a season where people are leaning on you and your heart is full of doubt, remember this: God doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs you to be present. He needs you to be honest with him, to cry out, to bring your doubt to the throne, not hide it behind performance. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is admit, God, I don't know how to do this without you. That is not weakness, that is worship. Because every time you come to the end of yourself, you come face with the beginning of God's strength. 2 Corinthians 12:9 reminds us, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. That verse wasn't written for people who have it all together. It was written for people like us who show up anyway, who lead through the shaking, who love through the fear, who speak even when our voice trembles. So if you're facing doubt but still carrying others, know that God sees you. He honors your quiet obedience, your hidden faithfulness, your midnight prayers, your early morning leadership. He's not disappointed in your doubt. He's not threatened by your fear. He is near to the brokenhearted, and he carries those who carry others. You may be someone's rock, but Jesus is yours, and the beauty of our faith is this: God isn't limited by your limitations. His plan doesn't collapse when you hesitate. His grace doesn't shrink when your confidence does. You might feel like you're falling apart, but sometimes what feels like falling is actually surrender. And surrender is the doorway to supernatural strength. That's when God steps in and shows you you were never doing this alone anyway. So take a breath, lay it down. Give him the weight, the pressure, the performance, the fear. And remember, God never called you to be enough. He called you to be his, and that is more than enough. Faith starts in the heart, but it can't stay there. At some point, your belief has to move, your hope has to walk, your trust in God has to make its way into your steps, your voice, your choices. This is the shift from faith as theory to faith as action. The woman in Mark 5 didn't just believe in her heart. She didn't just sit in her house repeating, God can heal me. No, she moved. She got up. She pushed through the crowd. She reached. That's what separates stagnant faith from living faith. No. James 2:17 says, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but it means your next move needs to align with your belief. The shift is this: acting like God is telling the truth. It's applying for the job, even if you've been rejected before. It's starting the ministry, even if you're not sure who will support you. It's reaching out for reconciliation, even if you're afraid of being hurt again. It's choosing joy, even when your circumstances haven't changed. It's praying bold prayers, even when your voice shakes. Action isn't about proving your faith, it's about revealing it. And faith isn't passive, it's a force, a momentum, a spiritual engine that drives you into the unknown, fully trusting that God is already waiting on the other side. But here's the key: the shift doesn't have to be massive. Sometimes it starts with one small, quiet step. Maybe it's sending the email, making the call, writing the vision down, setting the alarm, stepping into the room you once avoided. Because every step of faith is a seed, and God honors those seeds with supernatural increase. When the woman reached for Jesus, the crowd didn't part. She had to make her way through. She had to risk being seen, judged, and rejected. Faith will make you uncomfortable, but that discomfort is a sign you're growing. And more than that, it's a sign that something in your spirit refuses to stay stuck. There's a shift happening inside of you. You're not the same person you were when this video started. Your faith is rising. Your belief is deepening. And now, it's time to act. Because the miracle didn't happen when the woman believed. It happened when she moved, and maybe so will yours. So let's talk practical. What does faith in action look like for you right now? Is it asking for help instead of pretending you're fine? Is it opening your heart to love again? Is it finally enrolling, applying, starting, ending, speaking, forgiving? Don't overthink it, just obey. Delayed obedience can often look like disobedience in disguise, and fear loves to dress up as caution. But faith moves forward. Even if your step is shaky, take it. Even if your voice cracks, speak it. Even if you're afraid, do it afraid. Because faith is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need the courage to respond to God's prompting. So ask yourself, what is God nudging me to do? Whatever that answer is, do it. This is your shift. From passive belief to active obedience. From waiting for breakthrough to walking into it. Let your faith do more than feel. Let it move. Everything you've been through, every tear, every unanswered question, every silent prayer, has led you to this moment. And through it all, you were never alone. When fear whispered lies, God was still speaking truth. When doubt tried to drown you, His hand was still reaching for you. When it felt like everyone was depending on you, He was holding you. You may have thought the battle was yours to fight alone, but the truth is, God was always in the fire with you. The same God who walked with Joshua, who healed the woman in Mark 5, who strengthened Elijah in his weakness, that same God walks with you. So keep going, keep believing, keep pressing through the crowd, even when your heart is tired, because one touch, one prayer, one act of faith can change everything. You are stronger than you feel. You are more equipped than you know, and you are never without help. So step forward, not in your power, but in His presence. Because when God goes before you, nothing can stand against you. And if this message spoke to you, make sure to subscribe, like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and let's keep walking in faith together.